What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Primetime Sports Podcast, hosted by Joey McLeod. So tomorrow is BC season opener at Alumni Stadium. We got Boston College going up against Northern Illinois tomorrow at 12 o'clock, noon kickoff at BC. I'll be at the game. I have Paul from Southie here with me. He's going to come in now and give his predictions on the game, maybe talk about some outlook for the whole season for BC. We'll give some predictions at the end for the season. But here he is. How we doing, Paul?
Good, Joe. How you doing this Labor Day weekend?
Good, thank you. You're doing well, huh? Appreciate you coming on.
Doing great. I can't wait for BC football. Football all together is just a great time of year.
Well, we're already here. So tomorrow's the big day for BC going up against Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois did struggle last season. They were 3-9. Didn't really get much going at all offensively. They averaged 27 points per game, so middle of the pack. Defensively, one of the worst in the country, giving up 33 a game, which was 115 out of 131 last year. So couldn't really get much going either side of the ball. Offense was a little better than the defense. Their quarterback, Ricky Lombardi, missed some games last season. We were just talking to him before we got on here. He had 5 touchdowns throwing last year, 5 touchdown passes and a pick. Also added in a rushing touchdown as well. He'll be back with them tomorrow as a starting quarterback. So we'll see how that goes. But as for BC, though, big game tomorrow. Emmett Moore, now the full-time starter, which he kind of got the role midway through last season with Phil Jacovic going down with an injury. He's now the full-time starter. What are you expecting out of him? The offense in general, obviously no Zay Flowers anymore. It's a big loss. First-round pick to the Ravens. But good for Zay. He deserves it, obviously. But now this offense has to figure out a way to score without him. And they bring in a guy like Ryan O'Keefe from UCF. That's going to be a big part of the offense. Maybe play a similar role to Zay Flowers. Jaden Williams is back. And then obviously Patrick Garwo did struggle last season in the backfield. They need something out of him.
Well, everything's going to come down to their biggest weakness all of last year, and that was the offensive line. Just having Mahogany back, hopefully for the whole year. I feel like he's going to be a first-round pick, just like Zion Johnson was. BC, the old offensive line factory. So if the offensive line can play like I think they can this year, guys are getting older like Trapillo, but they picked up a couple of transfer portal guys. I think one from Texas State and one from Michigan. So this offensive line should take a huge step forward. Therefore, Garwo should run the ball better. Therefore, Moorhead should have more time. Therefore, he can utilize his weapons. I expect a big turnaround with the offense. I like what they picked up in Ryan O'Keefe. He seems like he could be a game breaker. The tight end looks like another in the long line of BC tight ends that have made the pros from Hunter Long.
George Takis, you're talking
George
about?
Takis, was he the Notre Dame transfer a couple of years ago?
Transfer, correct. Yep.
I mean, he looks like he's got great hands, good blocker. And the wide receiver crew looks like it has some depth with Tomlin. Joe Griffin coming off, a freshman year last year?
Yeah.
He looked like he was a big play guy as a freshman. He might not have all the speed in the world, but he's got great hands and he's got size. So offensively, I think BC is ready to turn the page on a 3-win season.
I'd hope so, considering last year obviously was a down year for the Eagles, being just 3-9 and really struggling on offense. Only 17.8 points per game for BC. That was just about bottom 10 in the country last season, 122 out of 131. And then we gave up 30.3 points per game, which was 100th out of 131 in college football. So they struggled on both sides of the ball last season. Obviously, offensively, having Mahogany go down early before the season even began, that was a big loss. And the offensive line was really young last year. Trapillo gets another year now of experience. Kendall gets another year of experience, which is huge for the offensive line. And then you bring in Hergel from Texas State, a transfer offensive lineman. Now he steps in and is a starter for BC, 6'2", 315, grad student, offensive lineman from Texas State. He was a 4-year starter between North Dakota State and Texas State, so he has a lot of experience now. And he was actually ranked, according to the BC website, at number 20 of interior offensive linemen by PFF in the preseason last year. So a pretty good offensive lineman. And even though BC typically has really good offensive line, players over the last 5-10 years. Last year was an off year for the offensive line,
Well, the year before they had lost a lot of guys to graduation, and they went to the pros if they left early. So it was a hole that we never fixed.
Yeah.
We were hoping some guys would mature with the little game experience, but that didn't work out. And of course, the Mahogany injury before the season started, and Hafley never really got a chance to correct the biggest problem, which is the offensive line. So we just named a few of the pickups they have, and hopefully some experience is going to get guys like Trapillo and Kendall up to par. I expect this team to move the ball 100% better than last year. I like what I saw in Moorhead. He's got size, he's got arm, he's got decent mobility, he can run the ball when he has to.
Very strong arm.
I think he can make all the throws, so he just needed time.
Definitely.
And you can't move the ball without time or an offensive line. Defenses know if you can't run the ball, they don't, they just go after the pass.
You don't have to respect their run
Right.
game. Yeah.
So I think
you don't have to
that's all
respect play
gonna
action.
change.
You don't respect
Right.
anything when you don't have
I
a
think
great
it's all
running
going to change, and I expect the offense to really put up some big numbers this year, especially against teams that won 3 games last year, like Northern Illinois.
So, yeah, BC last year only averaged about 18 points per game, which, as I said, was 122 out of 131 in college football. I think this year they add at least 10 points per game to their average. I'd say about 27 points per game. What would you say?
At least a touchdown, yeah. At least a touchdown.
I'd say about 27 points per game. I'd say that's pretty much where I'd put BC around for this upcoming season. But like you just said, though, we're talking Joe Griffin for a second. He had 5 touchdowns last year, limited opportunities, 18 catches, 234 yards, was the second best receiver on that BC offense, even though he only played, limited snaps, especially early in the season. Middle of the season is when he really started to get things going. 4 catches for 50 yards against Wake Forest, 3 catches for 53 yards against UConn, and then even had a 5-catch, 103-yard game with 2 touchdowns against Duke, and then even had a touchdown against NC State as well, 2-yard touchdown catch there in a big situation.
And that was down at NC State, a night game, and I think NC State was at least in the top 15 at the time.
BC ended up winning that game, too.
Yeah.
21-20.
Huge.
21-20, which they only won 3 games, so every single win was obviously important. But that touchdown catch was with 14 seconds left in the game.
Clutch. I think he's a big play guy.
14 seconds left in the game. And Moorhead had a good game then. 3 touchdowns, 2 picks, 330 yards. He shows that he can throw the ball. I mean, NC State has always had typically a good pass rush, especially good defense. It was 7-3 after that loss last year to BC. And last night, they actually opened up with a win over UConn. They were 14-point favorites. They ended up winning that game by 10 points, so didn't cover the spread of that one. But NC State's a good team, though. So BC beating them last year shows that offense can move the ball. We can score. Scoring 21 against them was better than the season average. Really averaged 17.8 points per game. So getting 21 against NC State is definitely solid, and hopefully that's a building block. That was the end of last season. So they started to get some things going towards the end of last season, and obviously things didn't work out. Only 3 wins for a program that was averaging about 6 wins, a season, especially in the Steve Adazio era, which last year was a tough one for Jeff Hafley.
Yeah, they were mostly in bowl games under Adazio, even though they didn't win them all. But I think under him, they went to a bowl game just about every year till the year they fired him.
Yeah. Even that year, they still made a bowl game when they fired him.
Yeah, someone had to step in and coach, right?
They had a fair share of Rich Cannell stepped in and coached. Right. But they had a fair share of cancellations, too, or postponements, COVID situations for some of their bowl games. So they haven't really played too many bowl games in the last 3 or 4 years due to lightning and rain, all that. But as for BC's offense, they're losing Zay Flowers, who had 78 catches for 1,000 yards last year, almost 1,100 yards, 12 touchdowns. Electric player all around. You lose him. Who's the guy in the offense that you think steps up? Joe Griffin, Jaden Williams? Is it Ryan O'Keefe? Mine's Joe Griffin. I think he's a guy that's going to step up, probably have about 7 or 8 touchdowns this year. I see 50 catches, let's say 1,000 yards. 1,000's a lot. Let's say 50 catches, 800 yards, 8 touchdowns.
Big numbers. I think Joe Griffin is the real deal. I was impressed by his rookie year last year.
It was, freshman year.
So I was impressed with him, but this guy, Ryan O'Keefe, comes up from what, Central Florida?
Comes up from Central Florida last season. At Central Florida, he had 5 touchdown catches, 725 yards, 73 catches overall. In his last 2 years, combined between UCF, he played 26 games, 13 and 13 in each of those 2 years. 812 yards, 725 yards, 84 catches, 73 catches, 7 touchdown receptions, 5 touchdown receptions. So obviously a big playmaking wide receiver, and similar build to Zay Flowers, 5'10", 175. So similar build to Zay, and hopefully he can have a similar role in the offense. I know me and you both are hoping that.
I think either him or Joe Griffin will be the breakout receiver. Tough shoes to fill with Zay, of course, the first-round pick going to the Ravens. But O'Keefe put up some very good numbers that you just read down there in Florida. So him or Griffin will definitely be putting up some big numbers, I think.
So now we'll slide over to BC's defense, which, if you look at BC's defense last year, they struggled on that side of the ball too. So it wasn't just the offense struggle, it was offense and defense collectively. And when you look at BC, in years past, they've had really good defenses over the years. Secondary, that was always a strong suit for BC. They put guys in the NFL. Lucas Dennis even, he was playing with the Falcons in the preseason this year. Ham Chivas was a guy that was one of the best cornerbacks in the country at one point. BC declares for the draft, ends up not working out, unfortunately. But he was one of the best cornerbacks in college football at one point, and I believe the 2017 season. And then they've had another fair share of guys like John Johnson III. Justin Simmons is another one. He was a great player, obviously, for the Broncos, and that his whole career he's been great in the NFL. But he started out right away as a star in the NFL, and he's been getting better each and every year as well. So what do you see for this BC defense? A lot of guys coming in that are new, and then even some new faces, that are freshmen, whether they're transfers, freshmen, and then also some guys that have been there for a while. Elijah Jones, Vinny DePalma. Those 2 guys have been there a long time.
What I read in the offseason, especially most recently, is that the defense, they expect to be a pretty good defense and rank highly in the ACC conference. The 2 portal guys they picked up from the Ivy Leagues are going to definitely strengthen a secondary, which might have been a weakness last year.
It was.
But keep in mind that the offense struggled so badly that the defense was on the field way too much. They had to be exhausted. There were so many 3-and-outs from that offense last year. So I think the defense might have been overshadowed a bit based on, too many plays out there. Vinny DePalma's a tackling machine. Sheeta Salah missed some significant games. When he's healthy, he's a great edge rusher. Putting pressure on the quarterback is what it's all about. So they got the tackling machine, Ezeraku, I think.
Donovan Ezeraku, he's
Right.
back for another year. Yep,
So-
Kim Arnold, I know you're a big fan of. He's back for another year. And then if you look at the secondary, Amari Jackson is a sophomore. That's a guy that we saw ball out in the spring game. He held his own out there in the spring game heavily. So I think he's going to be the best defensive back on this BC team this year. I like him a lot. I like Elijah Jones, too. Even though he's been there now for some time, he's had some fair share of issues with some penalties in years past. He plays hard, always gives you his all out there. We even met him. He's a nice kid. We got to talk to him after the spring game. So I wish him nothing but the best out there. They're a grad student and obviously a leader in that defense. I'd say the biggest breakout player, though, in that defense, I'm going to go Sheeta Salah. If he stays healthy, you could see 8 sacks out of him this upcoming season.
That's right. He's got all the physical tools, size and speed and strength. He can't stay on the field too much. He's been unlucky with injuries. So let's hope this is his year to stay healthy.
Absolutely. If you look at what he did last year for the BC team, very limited opportunities considering he did get hurt early in the season and just never could stay healthy the last couple of years, like you noted. But last year, he only played in one game. Just one game for BC last year. Just one game.
Yeah, so big loss.
And had one tackle, that was it. But he is a player that has the build, though, of an NFL defensive lineman, 6'4", 253. If you look at what he did over his career as a freshman in 2019, 2.5 tackles for loss and a sack in 6 games played, 2.5 sacks in year 2, a sack in year 3, only playing 8 games, though, in year 3, and just 1 game in year 4. So just 9 games combined over the last 2 seasons.
I think he has a similar skill set to, is it Micah Parsons? That's
Micah
right, Dallas?
Parsons, yeah, he's big like him.
Size, speed, and strength. I mean, he might be a step slower than him, but we've seen Sheeta Salah when he's on and healthy. He's a menace to quarterbacks in the backfield. So
Definitely.
He's just got to stay on the field and, again, use his skill set, and he's going to disrupt so many plays, even knocking balls down with his size. So I just hope he can stay healthy, and I think this defense is going to take a major step forward as well. New coordinator, I think.
Yep.
As well as, offense coordinator, offensive line coach. So I think with this new regime coaching, I expect BC to have a pretty decent season.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that one. Azar Abdul-Rahim is now the co-defensive coordinator. He got that job this past winter. And then Matt Applebaum is a new offensive line coach, coming over from the Miami Dolphins last year. So has some experience in the NFL, which helps as well. And then, like you said, they've been switching around some offensive, coaches, whether it's offensive line coach, which now Applebaum's stepping in there. Sean Duggan, co-defensive coordinator. Now, he's been with BC for the last few years, but now he's a co-defensive coordinator along with Abdul-Rahim. And then they got a new associate head coach as well. He was actually in the more special assistant role in years past for Jeff Hafley for 3 seasons. Now he steps in as the associate head coach. Now he's going to be doing offensive development, and that's Rob Chudzinski.
Yeah, we're hoping him to add some fire into the game plan. Yes,
Definitely. Yeah, he's been with BC for a while though now. So that's obviously good having him there now in a new role. Gets an upgrade from what he was in years past. And then Ezeraku was a guy you already mentioned. Led BC in tackles for loss last year, 14.5 with 8.5 sacks.
tackling machine.
So he's a guy to watch out for. 3 forced fumbles as well. He's going to get himself an NFL draft selection one day, I'm sure.
Hopefully all conference. Hopefully second or third team all conference.
He's
in a
got the
very
build.
good conference.
He's got the build, though, to be an NFL draft pick one day. 6'2", 240, but he's got the build, though, muscles-wise, and very good speed rusher as well. Finds ways to be a disruptor there in the run game a lot, which BC obviously needs considering the defense did struggle last season. And you had a special comparison from Ezeraku.
I see a similar skill set to 2 BC legends that did extremely well in the pros. One is still active, and that's Matt Milano with Buffalo. Another tackling machine no matter where you put him on the field. And, of course, the great Luke Kuechly, who seemed to be in every running play when he was a menace at BC with the defense. So I'm hoping that, is it Ezeraku?
Yep, Donovan Ezeraku.
Ezeraku can continue that linebacker play. I expect big things from him.
Yeah, and he's a defensive end. He had 61 tackles, which is hard to do. But regardless, like you said, I mean, they might line him up maybe
Yeah, you can
as a
put him in
linebacker
different
too. You can
places.
probably put him around, yeah. I mean, that's how it typically goes now in today's day. College, 3-4 system, 4-3, depending on where you
move 'em
guys line up, yeah. So obviously the offense had some changes. Now the defense as well. One guy I do like, though, is Amari Jackson, though. He's a guy we did see play in the spring game, and he was a guy that definitely stood out right away. Alex Washington coming over from Harvard. He's the guy who's going to get some snaps in the defensive backfield. Jalen Cheeks, now a starter at the nickelback position there for BC. Elijah Jones, still starting. Cole Batson, played a lot last season. Now he's the starting free safety for another season. Vinny DePalma's back for another year. He's a grad. And then Cam Horsley's back for another year as well, another senior. So they have a lot of veterans there in that defensive line, especially considering if you look at that defensive line, there's a lot of juniors and seniors there, especially from the linebacker to the defensive line. So the front seven, a lot of guys have experience. A grad student, Sheeta Salah, a senior in Cam Horsley, a junior in Donovan Ezeraku, a senior in Cam Arnold, a grad student in Vinny DePalma now doing his sixth season, and then a sixth season in Elijah Jones as well. So a lot of veterans there. So that should help BC's defense. And obviously, these guys know what it takes to win. They've been on some good BC teams. Obviously, last year was a struggle, but they've been on some good BC teams as well. So I'd say my breakout player on offense, I'm going to go Joe Griffin. I think a guy to keep your eye on, though, is Dino Tomlin. I know me and you both like Dino Tomlin. I think he's a guy to keep your eye on. Maybe gets more opportunities, gets himself some more playing time. Tajee Johnson's another guy, though. He shined a little bit in that spring game we were at. He caught a lot of balls in that. He's a guy to keep your eye on. And then one other player that I mentioned was Sheeta Salah. I think he could be a great breakout player for BC's defensive line. In his last year now in college, he's going all in, trying to make the NFL. As I said, I think he has the build to be an NFL defensive lineman. I think he's going to get himself drafted a year from now. I think he's going to have a big season for BC. Maybe 7-8 sacks. That would obviously be huge. Just need him to stay healthy. And then Amari Jackson is a guy that now stepping in as a sophomore, but really his first year getting a lot of playing time will probably be this year. He's a guy that's going to be a breakout in that secondary. But any guys you want to mention that are breakout candidates for BC? Ryan O'Keefe, I know he's the guy you mentioned.
I'm going to say Ryan O'Keefe on the offense. I think Pat Gow is going to return to his ability like he had 2 years ago when he was a game breaker. Alex Broom seemed to run the ball well, too. The holes just weren't there last year. So I expect the running game with Broom and especially Gowo and Ryan O'Keefe. I think they're going to have very productive years. And on the defensive side, I'll stick with Ezeraku. I know Vinny DePalma is a tackling machine, and we need his experience in the secondary. But I read during the offseason that the front seven is getting some notice. So I'm hoping they can stuff the run and pressure the quarterback. And that a lot of that's going to come from Ezeraku. Cam Arnold's got a lot of game day experience as well. So
yeah, you like Cam Arnold a lot.
I do. I think we talked to him one time before or after a game.
Yeah,
so
spring game or something it was.
I think BC is primed to take a big step forward from that 3-9 season last year.
I would agree with you. So we're going to give a whole preview of the schedule in just 1 second. Just a couple guys I want to mention on that Northern Illinois team. So we mentioned Rocky Lombardi. Their quarterback didn't play really much last season, just 4 games played, 645 passing yards, 5 touchdown passes, and a pick. Does run the ball a little bit. Did have a rushing touchdown last year, but he's more of a passer, from the pocket there. But Ontario Brown was their leading rusher last year, 689 yards, which was actually second on the team in rushing yards. He was number 1 in rushing touchdowns with 7 in last year's season. And then they also bring back a couple of their best defensive players, Devontae O'Malley, who was one of their best players with 7 tackles for loss last season and 5.5 sacks, which led them on defense. And they also bring back a cornerback or a safety or defensive back here at C.J. Brown. It's a safety, 76 tackles, which led the team also with a pick last year with a 29-yard return, 5 passes defended, a fumble recovery, and a forced fumble as well. So even though they did struggle last season, they have some players you have to watch out for there. And obviously one guy's Devontae O'Malley. BC struggled in the offensive line last year. So pass rushing was obviously a big issue for BC last year, trying to stop guys like Devontae O'Malley, who, let's see his build here, 6'2", 265, so a bigger guy. Last year at 5.5 sacks, 4 sacks the year before. So he's had a lot of production on that defensive line for Northern Illinois over the last couple seasons. That's a guy to watch out for. And then, like I said, maybe C.J. Brown in the defensive backfield. He's a safety there for Northern Illinois. 2 years ago at 107 tackles. Last year at 76 tackles. So he's a tackling machine. He's a guy to obviously keep your eye on. And if Emmett Moorhead has some lazy passes like he did last year, he could be a guy that picks off a pass. And Moorhead obviously has to be smart. Last year did have some questionable passes.
No, I think Moorhead has to, definitely take care of the ball this year. I think he was under duress a lot last year if he made a bad throw or he threw into coverage. I like his ability. I think he can make any kind of pass. Definitely has the strength to go deep, and I like his touch passes as well. I think he got to, maybe make better decisions and not throw into coverage. And I like his mobility. He's not afraid if he has to tuck it and run. He certainly has the wheels to do that. I'm expecting big things from him this year.
So last year he was 59% completion percentage, just about 60, 59.9%, 1,254 passing yards, 10 passing touchdowns, 6 picks. So what do you think for stat line from this upcoming season? Just maybe touchdowns to picks. I'd say if BC has a really good year on offense, which I think they can recover and get themselves back on track, I could see 25 passing touchdowns out of them. I'd say 25 touchdowns, maybe 12 picks. Which 12 picks, maybe that's not the best ratio, like 2 touchdowns to interceptions, really. But at the end of the day, this offense is going to have to take some shots downfield and move the ball. If the running backs do struggle like they did last year, you're going to have to really rely on the pass game. I'm going to say 25 touchdowns, 12 picks for Moorhead. Hopefully gets that completion percentage up a little bit. I'd like maybe 63%, maybe 64%. But we'll see how he does. What would you say for prediction for Moorhead this year?
I would say that's the same ceiling I'm looking at. I figure he can throw for hopefully 2 touchdowns a game, which would what would that average out? There's how many games we got?
12.
12.
So 24?
So, 24. And hopefully protect the ball. There's always one that's going to,
some fumbles too.
Be a receiver that might, drop it and then it's picked off. So I'd say like 24-10 would be a pretty positive year and a big step up for
where we were
Moorhead.
last year. Yeah, from where we were last year especially. But they lose some guys as well. So you mentioned Zay Flowers. That's a loss. Phil Jakovic goes over to Pittsburgh, which he lost a starting role anyways. Moorhead took over midway through the season. But Jakovic did struggle last year. 8 games played, 11 touchdowns, 8 picks. He was really good his first couple of years at BC, especially his first year at Boston College in 2020. 17 touchdowns, 5 picks. Then in 2021, played just 6 games, 7 touchdowns, 4 picks. And then in 2022, 11 touchdowns, 8 picks. So he finished in his last 2 years at BC, 18 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. And that's a guy that people had high expectations for, especially after that 2020 season. I always said, though, I thought Anthony Brown was a better quarterback because if you look at where BC was with Anthony Brown, I know the run game BC relied on heavily with A.J. Dillon, but we were a ranked team, and Anthony Brown was a very good quarterback for BC consistently year in and year out. I saw over the past few years, Jakovic making some sloppy passes, throwing the ball early in the game. First play of the game, throwing picks, just forcing passes when you don't need to early in the game.
Yeah, twice last year. I can remember the Florida State game and the Virginia Tech game. Seems like we were down 14-0 and the national anthem was still being sung.
Yeah, it was right away. Bad passes.
Both games.
You don't need to force passes in the first play of the game. Yeah.
Pick sixes.
And if they weren't, they were brought back pretty close.
That can't happen.
100%.
Put you in a hole.
But now we start for Pittsburgh. BC will actually end up playing Pittsburgh later on in the season, November on a Thursday night at Pittsburgh, though, so he won't be coming back to BC. But he'll get a chance to play his former teammates, which will probably be a cool game for him and obviously the BC guys that he's friends with. But now we'll give a breakdown of the schedule maybe and talk about what we think in each game. So we'll start off Northern Illinois, which is tomorrow. BC playing them at 12 o'clock. I think BC wins this game. I think it could be a close game, but I don't think it should be. I think BC should win this game by 10 or more. I'm going to take BC 30-17 in this game. You don't have to put, points if you don't want. You can just say win-loss for all these games. But what do you think, though, for this game tomorrow for BC? You think they get the win, of course, right?
I think they get the win and they cover the 9.5. I think their athleticism will wear this team down. And in the second half, they should pull away and win by 2 touchdowns.
And they were one of the worst teams in the MAC last year, NIU. So it's not like they're one of the top teams. It's not like it's Toledo or Ohio, 2 teams that could score the ball and play defense. Neither one of these teams, which BC struggled last year defensively, same thing with Northern Illinois. So they're both coming into the season trying to get themselves back on track, but I think BC has a better team. They both have things to prove, though, on both sides of the ball, but I'm going to go with BC winning this game by 13. Then next Saturday, BC plays Holy Cross. Win or loss to BC in your eyes?
It better be a win, or else this season will be on a disastrous track again. I mean, the athletes on our team should certainly outnumber the athletes on Holy Cross. I think BC could have a field day scoring points. I know Holy Cross had a really good year last year, but let's face it, it's apples and oranges, BC football to Holy Cross football. I don't know if they'll win by 3 touchdowns, but they should again win by a couple touchdowns, and it shouldn't be that close.
Well, if you look at BC, they ended up playing against Holy Cross for a couple of seasons. They played them, I believe it was in 2018. A.J. Dillon had an absolute field day of a game. I think he only had 7 or 8 carries. BC ended up winning that game 62-14. It was the second game of the year for BC. We were both at that game, so it's going to be the second game of the season this year as well. But BC was up right away, 21-0. After the first quarter, 13 they scored in the second quarter. So it was 34-0 BC after the first half, which then Holy Cross ended up having a blocked punt for a touchdown, which was good for them. I'm happy they at least scored some points in that game. You obviously want them to be able to go home and at least say, we scored a point or 2. Obviously I want BC to win the game, but at least give them something to at least be happy with going home. You know what I mean? They're a team that really put things together now over the last year, but obviously now BC doesn't have to hand touchdowns away. In that game, they had a blocked punt for a touchdown, and that was basically all they scored. They scored one other touchdown besides that.
I think BC again should win easily by a couple of touchdowns against this team and have no problem moving the ball.
I would agree with you. Let me give you the stat line of A.J. Dillon that day. Let me give you a look here. A.J. Dillon had 3 touchdowns in the first quarter, 7 yards, 74 yards, and 7 yards, which I remember the 74-yard touchdown when he made 3 or 4 guys miss up the right sidelines. Nobody could really touch him 100%. If you look at BC on that day, 245 passing yards to 66 for Holy Cross, 365 rushing yards to BC to 128 for Holy Cross.
It was a mismatch.
610 to 194 total yards on offense. BC just really took the game away, obviously, on the ground. A.J. Dillon finished that day on the ground just unstoppable. Had 6 carries for 149 yards and 3 touchdowns. Averaged 24.8 yards a carry.
I never heard a number so big in my life. 24 yards a pop. That's ridiculous.
Anthony Brown only had to throw 2 passes in the first quarter. I think he was out by midway through the second. 2 for 2 passing, 43 yards, and no touchdowns. They didn't even have a passing touchdown from Anthony Brown in this game. There were 2 by Matt McDonald, who ended up transferring to Bowling Green, and then 2 by E.J. Perry in this game. But their backups played pretty early in this game, so we'll see what is the case in that game next week. But I think BC will probably have to keep their starters as long as they did in that game. Holy Cross last year did have a good season. They were 12-1. As an FCS school, they actually ended up making it to the FCS tournament, losing to the number 1 team, South Dakota State, in that tournament, which was obviously tough, but a great season for them. They actually ended up winning 12 games, really turned the program around. There were rumors at one point if Jeff Hafley were to leave that BC would pick up that head coach and bring him in to be theirs. But obviously Jeff Hafley now gets another season, which what do you think about Jeff Hafley's future? BC has to win probably 6 games for him to stay probably another season, right?
Yeah, I think they got to hit that magic number and go to a bowl game. I think that would solidify his tenure going forward. I expect them to make a bowl this year and keep Hafley, and all this talk that he's on the hot seat should go away. He's a good guy and a good coach.
Well, he did sign that 5-year extension now just about 2 years ago almost, and it was an extension through the 2026 season. So they're not going to cut him and let him loose just to do it, because then you still have to pay him that money.
Very unlikely that they would let him go, even in a disastrous season. But I don't want him to carry that worry around.
I don't think he'll end up getting fired. If BC wins 7 games this year, he'll be back, I'd say, for another season. But the head coach for Holy Cross is Bob Chesney. He was hired by them in 2017, and he's really turned the program around. He's 37-17 with Holy Cross as the head coach. 12-1 last year, and then 10-3 in 2021. So 2 really good seasons in a row, and they've made the NCAA FCS tournament 4 years in a row. 4 years in a row, losing in the first round in 2019 and 2020, losing in the second round in 2021, and then losing in the quarterfinal in 2022. So very impressive. Very impressive. They actually were 6th at one point in the rankings last year. So they had a very good season overall.
I had read something early in the offseason that if Hafley did get fired, I heard that Chesney would be a guy they would be interested in filling Hafley's shoes if he was to be let go.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens in this game. I think it'll be a little bit closer than those years past. I originally said 44-27. I'm going to go 48-27 BC. So I think they should win by about 2 or 3 touchdowns maybe in this game. Hopefully.
I like that. I think they're going to light up the scoreboard, so they should probably win by 2 or 3 touchdowns. I would agree.
And then September 16th, Florida State, one of the best programs in the country. I had BC losing this game, unfortunately, 41-20. What do you think, BC wins or loses this game? It's a tough one to bet against Florida State.
You can't. Yeah, it's unrealistic to think that BC could win this game. Florida State really turned their program around. It was probably like 5 years ago when Adazio lit them up on a Thursday or Friday night.
Like Friday night game at BC.
35-3, I think. And look how far back Florida State has come. Jordan Travis is a legitimate Heisman candidate. I like what the coach has done. I think they're a top 5 team this year. I think BC will struggle because Florida State usually brings the athletes. It's speed. It's their defensive speed. BC will struggle offensively. I think that they won't put up more than like 17 points, and Florida State should probably score like 34. I would say 34-17 Florida State.
And if you look at Florida State now, they have one of the best pass rushers in the country, Jared Verse. A defensive end is going to be a top pick in the NFL draft this upcoming year in April. And then if you look at it, the quarterback as well. Travis is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Heisman candidate. And he's been great over the last couple seasons, especially last year. Took a great step up last year, getting his game better. But like you said, 35-3 is what BC beat Florida State as a score in 2017. You nailed that. October 27, 2017, BC won their 3rd game straight, beating them 35-3. A.J. Dillon, 149 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Which you called that, though. That was BC's first win over Florida State since 2009. When they won in 2017.
Remember that the school let us on the field. Remember that's when we met Hasselbeck and
Chris Lindstrom.
Lindstrom, who became a first-round draft pick of the Falcons that spring.
And we got a picture with John Hilliman, Anthony Brown, Tommy Sweeney. I even saw on the field that day. Eddie Fish, Matt Hasselbeck
from ESPN.
There were a couple
was
other
there,
ones.
yeah.
I'm trying to think. Lucas Dennis, we got a picture with.
Yeah, from Everett. Yeah, right.
We met Lucas Dennis. So that was cool. That was a good game. But I'm going to go BC losing that one 41-20 in this year's game against Florida State. I think it'll be a tough one. They're one of the top programs in the country. Tough to really bet against them in this game. September 23rd at Louisville. This could be a close game. They're pretty much evenly matched. I'm going to go Louisville, though, winning this one since they're home 30-20.
I don't know what Louisville did in the offseason, but I think I'm reading really good things about them. So it might be a struggle for BC, but replacing Malik Cunningham, I don't even know who their quarterback is, but
They had a transfer come in.
I think Louisville maybe turn the corner to, because I think they were down a few years ago, especially when A.J. Dillon went down there. I think he scored 5 touchdowns in one game down there.
2018 it was.
2018. So I think they've turned their program around. I think BC is going to struggle, but I'm not going to count them out. I think BC could squeak one out like 23-20. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say BC is going to squeak it out 23-20.
All right, so you got BC winning that game, which it was actually 2017 when A.J. Dillon went down. They had the big breakout game against Louisville, where that great run on the sidelines, taken, I think it was Chucky Williams, the defensive back for Louisville, and just threw him to the side and just went to the house, which was a crazy game. He really broke out.
Points.
Yeah, BC broke out that game. One on a field goal, too, if I remember right. Colton Lichtenberg, right, with the game winning.
They let him back in the game. He scored like 5 touchdowns. He scored 50
Beat Lamar
points.
Jackson.
That's right. They barely won the game, but it was Lamar Jackson. Yes.
So for Louisville, they got a new quarterback now, Jack Plummer. He's a transfer from Cal, also played 4 years at Purdue. Started 12 games last year at Cal, where he threw 21 touchdowns, had 9 picks, and 3,100 passing yards. Let's see his rushing stats here. Had 1 rushing touchdown. Doesn't seem like he's a mobile quarterback, though, here looking at his stats. 6'5", 220, probably is a big arm, I'd imagine. Now his third school, though. Purdue, UCal, Berkeley, and now going to Louisville. And they have a new head coach as well. So they have a lot of turnaround here for Louisville. Losing Malik Cunningham, one of the best college quarterbacks over the last couple of years, especially mobility-wise. Just electric quarterback to watch. Had the pleasure of meeting him last year when he was walking in to play BC. But I'm going to go BC losing this game, a close one on the road. I'm going to go 30-20 Louisville. And then Virginia. BC should win this game. I have BC winning that game on September 30th at home, 32-17. What do you think about this game? BC should win?
I feel the same way. What I read about Virginia this offseason is that they're going to struggle this year. I think they're picked either last or next to last in the conference. So BC should win this game. I don't think they'll have any trouble moving the ball. I think Virginia will struggle offensively. I expect BC to win something like 27-10.
Okay, I got BC winning this one 32-17, so we'll get a win either way. Then Army on the road October 7th. They run an offense that's very different than anything BC is going to play this year and probably many years past. They probably haven't played an offense like this for Army. An offense that likes to run the ball a lot. They love running a triple option and varying and, all that, deception, trying to get the defense to not be ready, knowing where the ball is, which it's very different than what BC plays against. So it's going to be a low-scoring game, I'm sure, but I think BC ends up winning this one 20-14. What do you think, though? It's on the road at Army.
I agree it's going to be a low-scoring game. Army likes to keep the time of possession in their favor. Basically, they might throw the ball 5 times in a game. They might go for it on 4th down several times. But you got to figure BC's run defense is going to step up here. And I think the offense should be able to move the ball. I don't think it'll be as close as some people think. I think BC will be able to move the ball and probably win like 24-13.
And I think Ezaraku probably could have a big game that day, probably like 8 tackles. Considering if they run the ball 100 times. I mean, he's gonna have 8 tackles if they run the ball 100 times, which we'll see what they do in that game. And then BC has a bye week in the October 14th week. So then October 21st, they return back playing now at Georgia Tech, though. I think BC wins this one 27-13 on the road. I think it'll be a close game. Georgia Tech has struggled in the years past, but they're getting some praise to be a better team this year than they've been. There's going to be some improvement, people say. So we'll see what they do. BC winning this one, though, 27-23.
I think BC should cover this game easy. It's hard to predict what the line would be 2 months from now, but BC should have their way with them. I think they can move the ball. I think they can win this game by a touchdown easy.
And then BC hosts UConn October 28th, right before Halloween, so Halloween weekend there. I have BC losing this game, which it's crazy to say because BC lost them last year as well, and that was really before BC got themselves back on track like I think they're going to this year, which last year they struggled. They were 3-9. I think they got themselves back on track this season. But UConn did just pick up former main quarterback Joe Fagnano. They only lost by 10 last night to NC State. Played them pretty close, played them pretty hard, losing that game 24-14. I think they're going to be in this game, UConn, and I think it's going to be an upset loss there for BC, unfortunately. I'm going to 24-20 UConn. I think UConn, they've got themselves back on track over the last couple of seasons. Jim Mora has been a great head coach for them. They bring in Fagnano at quarterback, who gave BC a little bit of struggle there in the first half when Maine came to BC last year in September. I'm going to go UConn winning this one 24-20. What do you got?
I agree with your assessment. I think Connecticut with Mora is a very good team, as evidenced last night in their...
kept it close with NC State.
Yeah, NC State, which was a ranked team for most of last year, till the quarterback went down, Devin Leary. But I'm still going to pick BC to win this game. Payback's got to be the ultimate reason. I mean, losing to Connecticut last year, I think they were embarrassed.
At UConn.
They might have only got a field goal in that game.
BC only got a field
Maybe,
goal.
And they lost. It wasn't even that close. Maybe like a 13-3. That's got to be enough motivation.
You nailed it. 13-3, October 29th. Wow, you nailed that.
I think BC's got to use that as a driving force to get revenge. So I think they're going to pull this one out. It's going to be a close game, definitely a one-score game, probably low scoring. I would say BC should win this game 20-17.
And the interesting thing is, last year, BC had 5 turnovers in that game. 5 turnovers. So they lose that game 13-3. That was the first time UConn ever beat BC. Yeah. So that's tough, obviously. Yeah. We've played them in years past. One time at Fenway, I remember John Hillman had a big game running the ball against them. Same thing with A.J. Damon. I think it was in 2017, if I remember right. But hopefully BC can get that win. But I think it's going to be a close one. I'm going to go with an upset loss there. But I have BC winning some games, that are close ones. Like, let's say, I think they could beat Georgia Tech. I think it's going to be a close game. So I have them winning some close games as well. The week after that UConn game, they go to Syracuse, November 3rd. IBC winning this one, 27-24. Another close win for BC. Some people have Syracuse being decent this year. They got Schrader back at quarterback. Garrett Schrader was a quarterback before. He's now back as a quarterback this upcoming season. We'll see what they do. IBC winning this one, though, in a close one, 27-24.
I think a lot depends on how Syracuse is going to be this year. They say that the coach, Dino Babers, is on the hot seat. If their season's over by then, I say BC wins. But if they're in contention for, a 500 record or better, Syracuse could pull this game out. BC struggled with them several times. Is that great running back still there?
Sean Tucker, I believe he is gone.
He's gone. If he's gone, I like BC's chances a little better. But, boy, he lit BC up a few times in the last couple of years, and they struggled with them.
Schrader did as well, though. He had 17 passing touchdowns last year, 7 picks. In the 2021 season, so 2 years ago, BC played them and he lit them up with Sean Tucker. 14 rushing touchdowns from 781 rushing yards. So they're going to struggle probably in that game stopping them. You need the linebackers to be able to tackle well. Cam Arnold, a couple other guys, Bryce Steele. Those guys have to be able to tackle well in that game because once he misses, once one guy misses, it could be daylight considering how good of a runner he is. He's 6'4", 230. You wouldn't think he's a good runner, but he is.
I'm going to stay with BC. If Tucker's gone, I know Schrader's dangerous and they struggled with him, but
I know we were talking about Schrader being dangerous, but with Tucker being gone, it's obviously a big loss there for that Syracuse offense. Ended up getting signed as an undrafted free agent with the Tampa Bay Bucks, it looks like here. But he was great as a running back for Syracuse. I know I just broke down some of the stats. I had to rewind it, though, since I messed up one of the stats. So I'm going to repeat them really quick to give you a breakdown of how good he was in his days at Syracuse, which he really lit up BC. In the 2021 season, though, 1,500 rushing yards almost, with 12 touchdowns on the ground, adding in 2 touchdown receptions that year. And then last year, 1,000 yards on the ground, 11 rushing touchdowns, 2 touchdowns in the air, 36 receptions, 56 total receptions over his last 2 years at Syracuse, with just about 23 rushing touchdowns and 4 touchdown receptions. So 27 total touchdowns over his last 2 years at Syracuse. He's dangerous, but with him not being there, you like BC to win this game.
I think BC is going to win this game. Again, probably some revenge should motivate them. I'll say BC can win this game like 24-17.
I got them winning 27-24. I'm just doing some, score predictions here just for fun. Figure we'll see how they look over the season when we get close. To each of these games, we'll obviously keep you guys updated with recaps. But the next game after that is Virginia Tech. BC hosts them on November 11th. I believe that's a night game.
Yeah.
So BC usually gets up for the night games, except that Kansas game in 2019 was a tough one. And then they lost to Clemson last year on a night game, lost to Duke last year on a night game. So last year was tough on night games. It did meet Maine, though, on a night game, which was nice. But BC has struggled with night games over the last year, but in years past, that's where they typically thrived. Miami, they beat in a big night game. That same season, they beat Florida State in 2017. Maybe BC gets some luck in this night game. I'm going to go BC winning this one 31-20 over Virginia Tech. What do you think, BC wins or loses?
I think they got to get revenge. They went down there like on a Friday night last year or a Saturday night down there at Virginia Tech. That was one of the games we were down 14-0, and they were still singing their fight song.
Coming out of the locker room, basically.
Yeah, the fight song was the
27-10 they won that game, by the way.
Yeah, so I think BC's going to handle them and lay a whooping on them. I don't think Virginia Tech's got it right since Frank Beamer left. I think BC can win this game like 30-13.
And I just looked it up. Their fight song that they bring everyone out to, the hype song.
Metallica, Sandman.
Yep.
Same as Mariano Rivera for the Yankees. Great tune. Yeah, crowd is nuts down there, yes.
So I got Tech losing this game to BC 31-20. They've had a lot of greats, though, for Virginia Tech over the years. Michael Vick, David Wilson from New York Giant, running back there. Pittsburgh, BC goes and faces them on a Thursday night at Pittsburgh, November 16th. I think BC loses this game on the road 24-13.
It's a short week going on the road. Pittsburgh had a pretty good year last year.
Jakovic
got to be up for us. I'm going to have to say Pittsburgh's going to win this game. Probably 27-17.
Okay, I'm going to go 24-13 Pittsburgh. Then the last game of the year at Miami, November 24th. I'm going to go BC losing this game 27-16. Could be a tough one. But we'll see how things go. What do you think about that Miami game to finish out the season?
It's the perfect story. It's the anniversary of the Flutie Hail Mary to Gerard Phelan, the Friday after Thanksgiving, down in Miami with Bernie Kosar and the great Hurricane team. But Miami has made some good strides going forward lately. I think we know they got a new AD, and they got a new coach the last couple of years. So I think Miami's probably going to beat BC. I think team speed will be a big advantage, as it usually is when you get down south. I'll have to say Miami's going to win this game 31-17.
So last couple of years for them, they have been good. They were 6-6 in the regular season in 2019. It was 2018. They finished 7-6. 2019 finishing 6-7, but they got a bowl game. 2020 8-3, got a bowl game there as well. 2021 7-5. Once again, another year with the bowl game. Last year, just 5-10, but they have gotten back on track, though, in years past. There could be a dangerous game there for BC, but you got Miami winning that game over BC.
I do. So I think that's going to give me, is it a 9-3 record, I guess?
So let's look. So you have BC beating Northern Illinois, Holy Cross, losing to Florida State, beating Louisville, you have them. So you got 3-1 there, beating Virginia, 4-1, beating Army, 5-1, beating Georgia Tech, 6-1, losing to UConn. Yeah. So it's 6-2, beating Syracuse 7-2, beating Virginia Tech 8-2, losing to Pittsburgh 8-3, and then you have the beating Miami, correct? Or you have losing to Miami?
No, losing to Miami.
Okay, so that's 8-4. Is that
8-4?
Okay, you have them at 8-4.
That would certainly be a step up from a 3-9 season and save Halfley his job. I think they can put it together. I'm expecting an 8-4 season and a nice bowl bid.
So you have BC losing to during the season, Pittsburgh, Miami, and Florida State, and UConn. UConn. Yeah, you have UConn winning that game? Okay.
Upset pick.
So you have BC at 8-4. Yeah. I have BC at 7-5. I have them beating Northern Illinois, beating Holy Cross, losing to Florida State, losing to Louisville, beating Virginia, beating Army, beating Georgia Tech, losing to UConn in a close game, beating Syracuse, beating Virginia Tech, losing to Pittsburgh, losing to Miami. So I got them at 7-5. 8-4 could happen, though. They could win that game against UConn or Louisville and be 8-4.
I read everything in the offseason. Some prognosticators have them going 10-2, which I see as a remote possibility. But
if they beat UConn and they beat, let's say, Miami, you never know.
They have one of the easiest schedules in college football. And again, some people, the over and under Vegas total is like
5.5.
5.5. So that's very little respect and barely an increase from last year's 3-9 season. So there's a lot of room for improvement. If they're healthy, I think they're going to get confident. I can see this team winning 8 games this year and going to a very good bowl game.
So you got 8-4 is your prediction, correct?
8-4 is my prediction.
So losses, just run over them one more time. You have them losing to Pittsburgh. You have them beating Miami, though, correct?
No.
You're losing to Miami. So losing to Miami, losing to Pittsburgh, losing to UConn, it is, and then losing to Florida State. There's your 4 losses, correct?
Yeah, if I had a chance to take a mulligan here and change something, I'll say they could lose to Louisville and then beat UConn. So either way, I'm going
8-4.
8-4.
Okay. So you'll switch it around maybe, see how things go. Those are toss-ups, regardless. I'm going to stay with mine, 7-5. I think 8-4 is likely because I think there is a chance they could win that game against Louisville. I think it could happen. I think it legitimately could happen.
They have to beat the teams that they're going to be favored over. Every one of these early games has got Florida State. I mean, there's no reason why they can't be like 4-1 going into the next month. I mean, Holy Cross, Northern Illinois, they're going to be favored considerably over both of those teams. Obviously, Florida State will struggle. Louisville, again,
a toss-up.
That's a toss-up. But Virginia and Army, they're going to be favorites over them. Georgia Tech favorites, UConn favorites, Syracuse possible favorite, Virginia Tech favorite, and they should be dogs against Pittsburgh and Miami. So I think they should be able to get their 8 wins. I'm going to say 8-4. Put that on my record. 8-4 BC this year.
And I'm going to go 7-5, which we did, the win-loss predictions here just to, keep track of it over the season. We did the score predictions just for fun, see how things work out. Maybe we ever, nail a score. It'd be funny if you ever get one right. But anyways, that'll conclude this episode. But Paul, thank you so much for coming on, talking BC football. I know you're excited for the game tomorrow. Who's your one guy that's going to score a touchdown for BC tomorrow? Can you pick a receiver, a running back? Do you lock in on scoring a touchdown?
I would go to the bank right now on Joe Griffin, and I'll give you 2. Bonus pick, Pat Gallo. We'll run one in. Guarantee that. 2 touchdowns right there, 1 each.
Okay, I'll go O'Keefe, and I'll go Dino Tomlin. I'll go Dino Tomlin touchdown, which probably a long shot there, but I think he's going to have a good game. And I'd go one defensive player that's going to make a big play tomorrow. I'm going to go a sack by Sheeta Salah.
I agree. Sheeta Salah's got to be hungry. After playing only 1 game last year, he knows what his skill set is. He's got the speed. He's got the strength. I expect him to have a couple of sacks, maybe bat down a few balls, maybe a sack. I expect a big game defensively from Sheeta Salah.
Which I would hope, considering he's been hurt the last couple of years, and we know how much he wants to play and get out there. And then Amari Jackson, if there is a pickoff there, by that BC secondary, he's my guy that's going to get a pick.
I agree with that. Maybe Vinny De Palma might get a deflection, but you know he's going to take somebody out. De Palma's a tackling machine. I can see him getting his hands on a ball, especially on a deflected ball. He's got good instincts. So I'm going to go Vinny De Palma.
Okay, so you got Vinny De Palma throwing in Rocky Lombardi, the quarterback for Northern Illinois, throwing a pick to Vinny De Palma, and then
sack by Salah.
So you got a sack by Salah, a big play by Vinny De Palma getting an interception, and then I got Amari Jackson in BC's defensive backfield getting a big interception. So we'll see what happens in the game. I know you're excited just to get back to Alumni Stadium, as I am as well, missing BC every day, don't we? But we can't wait.
Can't wait. Great weather. What a weekend. Starting college football with my Eagles. I can't wait. I'd even suit up if they ask me.
If they need you out there for punt returns and practice.
I'm there. I'm ready. I'll be there at 9:30 on the field returning punts in practice.
I know you'd want nothing more than that.
I'll take a hit for them. Absolutely put my pads on, yes.
You can't wait to ship it up to Boston with them coming out of the locker room
Come out
tomorrow.
of the tunnel with the fireworks going off. Halfley leading them out there. The crowd's going to be raucous. They can't wait. Students are back. Nothing better than the super fans with the Killers going off at halftime. Right
Mr.
before
Brightside.
halftime.
Mr. Brightside by the Killers, yep.
Pageantry is unmatched.
We can't wait. So we'll be psyched. We'll give you guys a recap of the game probably over the weekend. And then next week, the New York Giants start Sunday Night Football. So a week from this coming Sunday. So we'll give a whole preview of that Giants season at some point. But anyways, thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen to us. Thank you, Paul, for coming on. Much appreciated.
Always a pleasure, Joe. Go Eagles.
Paul, the sports wizard. What a pleasure it is to have him on here. Much appreciated, guys, for listening. Thank you guys. Have a great long weekend. Take it easy. And I will see you guys in the next episode. Thank you.